Hi guys, Red here. I'm gonna read some books to you. Whether you watch this at bedtime or at breakfast time, I hope you enjoy them. The first story I've picked out is Giraffe and a Half by Shel Silverstein, one of my favorite authors. He writes some just fun stuff. So here we go, Giraffe and a Half. If you had a giraffe and he stretched another half, would have a giraffe and a half. If he put on a hat and lived, and inside lived a rat, you would have a giraffe and a half with a rat in his hat. If you dressed him in a suit and he looked very cute, you would have a giraffe and a half with a rat in his hat looking cute in a suit. If you glued a rose to the tip of his nose, you would have a giraffe and a half with a rat in his hat looking cute in a suit with a rose on his nose. No. If a bumbly old bee stung him right on the knee, you would have a giraffe and a half with a rat in his hat looking cute in his suit with a rose on his nose and a bee on his knee. Oh no, look, there's the bee. If he put on a shoe and he stepped in some glue, you would have a giraffe and a half with a rat in his hat looking cute in a suit with a rose on his nose and a bee on his knee and some glue on his shoe. Uh-oh, there's the glue all the way over there. Look, there's the glue. If you gave him a flute and he played tooty toot, you would have a giraffe and a half with a rat in his hat looking cute in a suit with a rose in his nose and a bee on his knee and some glue on his shoe playing toot on a flute. There's a lot going on right there. Look at that. At least we got the little boy playing the drums. If he used a chair to comb his hair, you would have a giraffe and a half with a rat in his hat, looking cute in his suit with a rose on his nose and a bee on his knee with some glue on his shoe, playing toot on a flute with a chair in his hair. Oh my goodness, what is going on? The little boy has a comb. He's trying to tell the giraffe to use the comb, not the chair. That's kind of silly. If you tripped on a snake who was eating some cake, you would have a giraffe and a half with a rat in his hat, looking cute in a suit with a rose on his nose and a bee on his knee and some glue on his shoe, playing toot on a flute with a chair in his hair and a snake eating cake. Whew, a lot going on. My goodness, silly giraffe. If he found an old trunk and inside was a skunk, you would have a giraffe and a half with a rat in his hat, looking cute in a suit and with a rose on his nose and a bee on his knee with some glue on his shoe, playing toot on a flute with a chair in his hair and a snake eating cake and a skunk in a trunk. Now he's just carrying around a lot of stuff. Oh my goodness gracious. If he met a fat dragon who sat in a wagon, you would have a giraffe and a half with a rat in his hat, looking cute in a suit with a rose on his nose and a bee on his knee and some glue on his shoe, playing toot on his flute with a chair in his hair and a snake eating cake and a skunk in a trunk and a dragon in a wagon. Oh my goodness. If he jumped on a bike and rode over a spike, you would have a giraffe and a half with a rat in his hat, looking cute in a suit, with a rose on his nose and a bee on his knee and some glue on his shoe, playing toot on a flute, with a chair in his hair and a snake eating cake and a skunk in a trunk and a dragon in a wagon and a spike in his bike. Oh my goodness gracious. Hey, at least the little boy is helping out, pulling the dragon along. Look at that. Oh my goodness. If a blubbery whale got a hold of his tail, you would have a giraffe and a half with a rat in his hat, looking cute in his suit, with a rose on his nose and a bee on his knee and some glue on his shoe, playing toot on a flute, with a chair in his hair and a snake eating cake and a skunk in a trunk and a dragon in a wagon and a spike in his bike and a whale on his tail. Oh, that whale does not look happy. Oh my. If he fell in a hole that was dug by a mole, you would have a giraffe and a half with a rat in his hat, looking cute in a suit, with a rose on his nose and a bee on his knee and some glue on his shoe, playing toot on a flute, with a chair in his hair and a snake eating cake and a skunk in a trunk and a dragon in a wagon and a spike in his bike and a whale on his tail in a hole with a mole. Look, that's the rose that was on his nose. See what happens. But if you brought him a pole to climb out of the hole, the whale left his tail and went off for the mail. And he gave the spiked bike to a scout on a hike. There go the scouts. And he left the fat dragon 'cause his wagon was sagging. Look at that. And he gave his chair to a tired old bear. And he traded the flute to a bird for some fruit. Oh, that's a smart trade. And he told that old snake to go jump in the lake. And a man who brought junk bought the trunk with the skunk. That's a lot of junk. Oh my goodness. And he gave the rose to a girl he chose, while the bee on his knee flew away with the flea. And he put the shoe with the glue on you. Oh my goodness. And that silly old rat ran away with his hat. Oh, silly giraffe. And he put his suit in the laundry chute. And he shrank another half. You would have a giraffe. Back to the normal giraffe. Again, one of my favorite authors. Right, some good stuff. The next book is a fun new one that I found. Switch on the Night. Let's see. I don't think this one's scary. I think it's about the night, but we're going to see what happens. Once there was a little boy who didn't like the night. I know I didn't like the night either when I was young. He liked lanterns and lamps and torches and tapers and beacons and bonfires and flashlights and flares, but he didn't like the night. Look at all those lights in there. I don't blame him. You saw him in parlors and pantries and cellars and cupboards, and attics and alcoves, and hollering in the halls, but you never saw him outside in the night. He's everywhere but outside. He didn't like light switches at all, because light switches turned off the yellow lamps, the green lamps, the white lamps, the hall lights, the house lights, the lights in all the rooms. He wouldn't touch a light switch, and he wouldn't go out to play after dark. He was very lonely and unhappy, for he saw from his window the other children playing on summer night lawns. In and out of the dark and lamplight the children ran happily. Look at all the different lights. Oh no. He's watching outside. But where was our little boy? Up in his room, with his lanterns and lamps and flashlights and candles and chandeliers, all by himself. He liked only the sun, the yellow sun. He didn't like the night. When it was time for Mother and Father to walk around switching off all the lights, one by one by one, the porch lights, the parlor lights, the pale lights, the pink lights, the pantry lights, and the stair lights. Then the little boy hid in his bed late at night. His was the only room with a light in all the town. Everything is dark except the little boy's room. And then one night, with his father away on a trip and his mother gone to bed early, the little boy wandered alone, all alone through the house. My, how he had the lights blazing! The parlor lights and the porch lights, the pantry lights, the pale lights, the pink lights, the hall lights, the kitchen lights, even the attic lights. The house looked like it was on fire. Oh, how bright it is. Oh my goodness. But still the little boy was all alone, while the other children played on the night lawns, laughing far away. All of a sudden he heard a rap at the window. Something dark was there. A knock at the screen door. Something dark was there. Tap at the back porch. Something dark was there. Oh no. He looks scared. Let's see what happens. All of a sudden, someone said, "Hello?" And a little girl stood there in the middle of the white lights, the bright lights, the hall lights, the small lights, the yellow lights, the mellow lights. "My name is Dark," she said, and she had dark hair and dark eyes and wore a dark dress and dark shoes. But her face was as white as the moon, and the light in her eyes shone like white stars. "You're lonely," she said. She sounds like a nice friend. "I want to run with the children outside," said the little boy, "but I don't like the night." "I'll introduce you to the night," said Dark, "and you'll be friends." She put out a porch light. "You see," she said, "it's not switching off the light. No, not at all. It's simply switching on the night. You can turn the night off and on just like you can turn a light off and on with the same switch," she said. I never thought of that, the little boy said. And when you switch on the night, said Dark, why, you switch on the crickets, and you switch on the frogs. And you switch on the stars, the light stars, the bright stars, the true stars, the blue stars. Heaven is a house with porch lights and parlor lights, pink lights and pantry lights, red lights, green lights, blue lights, yellow lights, flashlights, candle lights, and hall lights. Look at all the stars and the lights. Oh, how neat. Who can hear the crickets with the lights on? Nobody. Who can hear the frogs with the lights on? Nobody. Who can see the stars with the lights on? Nobody. Who can see the moon with the lights on? Think what you're missing. Have you ever thought of switching on the crickets? Switching on the frogs? Switching on the stars? And the great big white moon? No, said the little boy. Well, try it, said Dark. And they did. They climbed up and down the stairs, switching on the night, switching on the dark, letting the night live in every room, like a frog, or a cricket, or a star, or a moon. And they switched on the crickets, and they switched on the frogs, and they switched on the white ice cream moon. Oh, I like this, said the little boy. Can I switch on the night always? Of course, said Dark, the little girl, and then she vanished. And now the little boy is very happy. He likes the night. Now he has a night switch instead of a light switch. He likes switches now. He threw away his candles and flashlights and lamplights, and any night in summer that you wish, you can see him. Switching on the white moon, switching on red stars, switching on blue stars, the green stars, the light stars, the white stars, switching on the frogs, the crickets, the night. And running in the dark on lawns with the happy children laughing. Fun they're having. Oh, that was Switch on the Night. I found another one. Amos. The story of an old dog and his couch. I know we all are very familiar with our couches right now. I know I am. And I like this. It's dedicated to old dogs everywhere. Amos is an old dog who lives on an old couch in an old house. Look at Amos. That used to be filled with activity. Once the kids were all grown up and had moved away, things were kind of quiet. Mr. and Mrs. Bobson went out a lot, but they never took Amos with them anymore. Look at all the activities. There's poor Amos. Look. Oh. Mr. and Mrs. Bobson going out and leaving Amos on the couch. Oh no. Where did they go? Amos wondered. If only I could go along, he thought. One day, after the Bobsons had gone out, Amos was awakened by a loud, persistent Buzz. He hadn't caught a fly in years, but he decided to give it a try. He tried and he tried. Finally, he went after it with his paw. He missed the fly, but hit something else. For suddenly, vroom, the couch moved. Amos hit the cushion again. The couch seemed to come alive. Vroom, vroom. He tried it again and again. Crash! Finally, he backed the couch up very slowly and guided it into place. Amos could not remember when he had been so tired or so happy. The next morning, Amos could hardly wait for the Bobsons to leave. As soon as they were gone, he started up his couch and threw it into gear. Vroom! He shot out the door, just in time to spot the Bobsons pulling out of the driveway. So he followed them. Zooming through traffic. Right out into traffic. Look at that. He managed to stay with them all the way to the supermarket. Probably gonna buy me some chicken, he thought, and waited patiently for their return. He didn't mind waiting. He had plenty of company. I gotta show you this. There's dogs in all these cars. Look, look. Pretty soon the Bobsons were back. Amos started up his couch and followed the Bobsons out of the parking lot. Next, they stopped at a yard sale. Amos had to think fast. Say, that looks just like our couch, said Mr. Bobson. Oh, it couldn't be, said Mrs. Bobson. Our couch is at home with Amos on it. Uh-oh, there's Amos hiding. Amos decided he had taken enough chances for one day. When the Bobsons drove off on their next errand, he headed straight for home. When the Bobsons got back, they found Amos stretched out on his couch as usual, looking a bit more tired than usual. That night they all had chicken just as Amos knew they would. The next morning, Amos wasted no time. As soon as he heard the Bobsons start their motor, he started his. And he was on his way. Out the door he went. He followed them downtown. Oh, look at all the accidents he's causing. Over the bridge. There they go. Through the zoo. Past the playground. Amos began to grow tired and hungry, so he headed for home. He turned around. On the way, he stopped to make a few friends. Friends with a bird and a monkey. He stopped again to make a few more friends. Look, he stopped at the hot dog cart, and he stopped by the ice cream place. That was bumper to bumper to couch to bumper. Uh-oh. I skipped a page. I'm sorry. Oh, and he stopped and made a few more friends. Look, he stopped at a pizza place, and they're all waving. Okay. Suddenly, Amos realized it was getting late. I'd better hurry, he thought. But what Amos hadn't thought about, and what dog does think about such things, was rush hour traffic. That was bumper to couch to bumper. He would never get home before the Bobsons, unless they were stuck in traffic too. I don't see them. But they weren't. Where on earth could he be? Amos! Amos! Uh-oh. He hadn't touched his food. His toys were where they had always been, under his couch. But where was the couch? The Bobsons began to fear they might never see Amos again. But rush hour doesn't last forever. Amos! Amos needn't have worried. The Bobsons were just happy to see him. So that's your secret, they said. From then on, Amos was the happiest dog in the world because the Bobsons took him everywhere they went. And every once in a while, Amos took them someplace too. That's a fun one. Okay, my last story of the night. I'm sure a lot of you know this one already. Where the Wild Things Are. I read this one lots of times as a kid myself. The night Max wore his wolf suit and made mischief of one kind and another. His mother called him Wild Thing, and Max said, "I'll eat you up." So he was sent to bed without eating anything. That very night, in Max's room, a forest grew and grew and grew until his ceiling hung with vines, and the walls became the world all around. And an ocean tumbled by with a private boat for Max, and he sailed off through the night and day. And in and out of weeks, and almost over a year, to where the wild things are. And when he came to the place where the wild things are, they roared their terrible roars, and gnashed their terrible teeth, and rolled their terrible eyes, and showed their terrible claws. Till Max said, "Be still," and tamed them with a magic trick of staring into all their yellow eyes without blinking once, and they were frightened and called him the most wild thing of all. And made him king of all wild things. "And now," Max cried, "let the wild rumpus start." Rumpusing, dancing, playing, and hanging from the trees. Max being carried around. Now stop, Max said, and sent the wild things off to bed, without their supper. And Max, the king of all wild things, was lonely, and wanted to be where someone loved him best of all. Then, all around, from far away, across the world, he smelled good things to eat. So he gave up being king of where the wild things are. All the wild things are sleeping. And poor Max. All alone and sad. That's okay. But the wild things cried, "Oh, please don't go. We'll eat you up. We love you so." And Max said, "No." The wild things roared their terrible roars, and gnashed their terrible teeth, and rolled their terrible eyes, and showed their terrible claws. But Max stepped into his private boat and waved goodbye. He's saying bye. And sailed back over a year, and in and out of weeks, and through a day. And into the night of his very own room, where he found his supper waiting for him. And it was still hot. That's all I have for tonight. Love to you all. Good night.